back to our seminars. Today we have two presenters, Yijun and Wang, who are from the transportation department here at U.T. They're both going to talk about emissions and electric vehicles. So we're going to start with Yijun. She's going to present her part, and then we have 5 minutes question, and then we'll move on to Anne, and go back to questions to Yijun if we have more time. All right, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Yijun.
So, hello everyone, my name is Yijun, and you can also call me Jessie. And today, Anne and I are going to introduce you two approaches to estimate greenhouse gas emission reduction potential of EV deployment in the GTHA. So I'm going to present by telling you a method that operationalizes the concept of marginal emission factor, and I is going to introduce you a method that operationalizes the concept of uncertainty. So the title of my presentation is Marginal Emissions of Ontario's Electricity System and the Implication of Electric Vehicle Charging. And this study is conducted by the supervision from Professor Mary and Professor Daniel Poulsen. As the first speaker, I'm going to introduce some background. So since everyone is interested in transportation, so you already know that transportation sector is accounted for 34% of Ontario's greenhouse gas emission. And since electric vehicle does not generate any exhaust emissions, so vehicle electrification is put on the agenda of Ontario's climate change action plan, or it was put on the agenda. Yeah. And from a life cycle perspective, electric vehicle does have emission and is associated with electric vehicle charging from the electricity grid. Therefore, it's important to account for emissions from electricity generation if we want to estimate the emission reduction potential of EV. So traditionally, we do the estimation by using an average emission factor, which is an weighted average of fuel emissions with respect to a specific electricity generation mix. However, when we have a large increase of electricity demand, not all the generator responds to such marginal increase of demand. For example, when we have EV charging, it will be a large increase. And as shown on this graph here, which is the hourly electricity supply by fuel type in Ontario for 7 days, when you see the red box, when there's a large increase of demand, mainly natural gas, which is the dark blue on the graph, that respond to this marginal increase of supply. Therefore, and we also know that natural gas is relatively carbon intensive compared to other energy sources that we use in Ontario. Therefore, it's important to generate marginal emission factors that can reflect such marginal increase of electricity supply. And this approach has been applied by many researchers around the world. And based on literature review, we found that there are small factors or perspective that we can take into consideration when we generating marginal emission factor or to estimate energy consumption of EV charging. Therefore, we think upgrading and combining those two types of study can improve the impact assessment of EV charging at a regional level. So our research question have 3 of them. The first one, we want to answer the question that what is an effective way to generate marginal emission factor for Ontario's electricity grid? And secondly, we want to answer the question that with different EV penetration rate and vehicle charging scenario, what is the total greenhouse gas emission of EV deployment in the GTHA area? And eventually, we want to answer the question that what is the greenhouse gas emission reduction potential of EV charging in the GTHA? So we designed a 2-step methodology. The first step is to generate marginal emission factor for Ontario's electricity grid. But compared to the traditional method, we want to introduce more factor and more aspect to design a new method. And the next step is to estimate greenhouse gas emission of introducing EVs in the GTHA area. Since we want to get a sense of the impact from different EV charging and electricity generation mix, we designed a scoping study. By that, we designed 3 sets of scenarios. So the first set of scenario is about electric generation mix. So we extracted electricity generation data from both 2011 and 2017 since Ontario phased out coal back in 2014. So in 2011, we have more than 18% electricity is supported by fossil fuel power plants. But now in 2017, it's decreased to 4%. And the second set of scenario is we designed a 5 charging scenario, which I'm going to introduce later in the presentation. And the last set of scenario is 2 EV penetration rate, 5% and 30%. So the 5% is determined based on Ontario's short-term EV sales goal in 2020. And the 30% is determined based on Ontario's long-term energy plan in 2035. However, since this is a scoping study, we don't want to predict for the future. We just want to get a sense of the impacts. So back to part 1. Traditionally, the marginal emission factor is generated based on a single linear regression model. And so in this model, the independent variable is a change in amount of electricity generated. And the dependent variable is a change in total emissions from electricity generation. And the slope of this single linear regression model is the marginal emission factor in the unit of kilogram CO2 equivalent per 1 megawatt hour electricity generated. However, we decided to take more variations into consideration, such as the load variations and temporal variations. Therefore, we upgraded the single linear regression model to a multiple linear regression model. So now, the coefficient of the single linear regression model is replaced by a more sophisticated relationship that considers system load, load changing rate, and also the temporal variation of load. And for the second step, we want to generate the trip level energy consumptions. And in order to do so, we developed an extended activity-based travel demand model, which is the GTHA model. I think many of you may know that already. And based on that model, we are able to generate the average speed. And this average speed is required to generate energy consumption rate, since we find a relationship between average speed and energy consumption rate based on a study that's conducted from a dynamometer test. And also, since we are using this model is supported by TTS data. And because of that, we are able to get very detailed trip information. For example, the start time, end time, and also trip purpose. With such kind of information, we are able to create charging scenarios. And here are the 5 charging scenarios. And now I'm going to explain them to you by a simple demonstration. So here are the daily trip of a random person in the GTHA. And the first charging scenario is home charging. So by assuming that so for home charging, we assume people start to charge right after they arrive at home. So first step is to identify the available charging time. And then we calculate the total hours they need to charge. And that's based on the total energy consumption and also the charging rate. And in this case, it's 4 hours. And we do the same for all the other charging scenarios. So for the second scenario is working at shopping place charging. It's quite straightforward. And the third charging scenario is called night charging, which we assume that people start to charge at 12 a.m. or later if they arrive home after 12 a.m. And the fourth scenario is called downtown versus suburb charging. It's a combination of scenario 1 and 2. And we developed this based on the assumption that people living in the suburb are more likely to have a driveway to charge. But in this case, this person is living in the downtown area, so it has to charge at work and shopping place. So the charging profile for scenario 4 is identical for scenario 2 for this person. And the last charging scenario is called low emission charging. And we developed this charging scenario by matching the lowest available marginal emission factor to the charging time. And to develop this kind of scenario, we are able to create a lower bound of emission in terms of EV charging, and also can help us to discover the most appropriate charging time for the population. And here are our results for part 1. So this table shows you the average emission factor and the marginal emission factors. And by looking at this table, I don't want you to see the numbers. It's a lot. But what I want to show you is the color ingredient. So the color on this projector is not working very well, but I think the darker color to the lighter color is indicating the highest value to the lowest emission value. And by seeing the comparison between average emission factor and the marginal emission factor. So here the average emission factor, this column, and those are the marginal emission factor. By seeing the comparison, we know the marginal emission factor can better reflect the daily, monthly, and seasonal variations. And to capture those kind of variation is very important because the emission can be quite high at sometimes during the year or during the day. For example, the average emission factor is ranging from 13 to 30, but the marginal emission factor is from 0 to more than 200. And also, based on looking at this map, we find in summer and winter, the emissions are quite high. And we think it's because during summer and winter, there's a higher electricity demand for cooling and heating activities. And here are the results from part 2. So this is the total daily emissions of EV charging in the GTHA. And this is for 5% EV penetration rate. And by looking at the 2 study years, so the first column for each study year are results from marginal emission factors, from average emission factors. And the second and third column sections are results from marginal emission factors. So our first conclusion is that using average emission factor can underestimate total emissions. And secondly, by comparing the result between 2011 and 2017, we are able to know that 2011 has much higher total emissions. And this is because in 2011, the share of coal and natural gas is much higher than 2017. And those two energy sources have much higher carbon intensity. And also this highlights that the substantial impact of electricity generation mix, and also highlights that the difficulty to predict an electricity generation mix by using modeling, because sometimes the decision or the changes are made by political reasons. And the third observation is for charging scenarios. As you can see here, the highest emission is coming from home charging, and the night charging is the second lowest, and is also nearly matching the lowest charging emission. However, when we see the graph for a 30% EV penetration rate, night charging is much higher than the others. And this may indicate that night charging with a higher EV penetration rate may not be the best option, but it also because there may be a limitation of our empirical modeling. And I will explain that in the hourly emissions and energy consumption profile for EV charging. So this is the charging emission and energy consumption profile for night charging and low emission charging. And the bar charts at the background are the energy consumptions. So by comparing those two profiles, we found that the peak electricity demand for night charging is much higher than the peak electricity demand for low emission charging. And it's more than doubling that amount. And also this peak electricity demand, which is about 3,500 megawatt hour, is exceeding the range of our historical data of the change of system output, which is ranging between 2,000 megawatt, negative 2,000 megawatt to positive 2,000 megawatt. However, by also doing the comparison, we found by smoothing out the charging demand between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m., we are able to further reduce emissions. And finally, we are able to calculate the percentage greenhouse gas emissions of EV deployment in the GTHA. We are able to calculate the percentage by EV penetration rate, charging scenarios, method of generating emission factors, and also the electricity generation mix. And by looking at the upper table, we are able to find that the reduction of emission by comparing with equivalent size of gasoline vehicles can reach 80% to more than 95%. But compared to the entire vehicle fleet, we are able to achieve 4% with 5% EV penetration rate, and also about more than 20% emission reduction with 30% EV penetration rate. And so those are the four main takeaways from our study. The first one is vehicle electrification can achieve substantial greenhouse gas reduction in the GTHA. And this means we should really put into more effort to enhance adaptation of EV instead of canceling the incentive program. And secondly, marginal emission factor should be considered to estimate electric vehicle emissions. This is because, as I mentioned, first, average emission factor can underestimate total emissions. Secondly, it's because marginal emission factor can better reflect temporal variation. And lastly, it's because marginal emission factor can allow us to generate low emission charging scenarios. And the third, and that also leads to our third takeaway, which is there's a need for policies that can smooth the charging demand after midnight. And the last takeaway is that there may be a need of a power system operation model because if we want to do longer-term prediction of EV saving, using empirical modeling, there may be a limitation and give us maybe wrong result. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I think I have 5 minutes to answer questions. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Yijun?
Go ahead.
Okay, I might miss some part, but do you assume that everybody is going to charge every day for?
So first, we don't assume everybody will charge since we have an EV penetration rate, so only certain parts of the vehicle population.
Okay, yeah, those I mean about the electric vehicle user are all, for instance, 5% or 30% that are electric vehicle.
The EV penetration rates means like in the entire vehicle fleet, 5% of the electrical vehicle will become electric vehicle.
Okay, and all of them are going to charge every night, for instance, or every day when they get home?
Yes, for different scenarios. For example, home charging scenario, we assume everyone will charge at night after they arrive at home if there's a need. For example, if they have used their vehicle based on the TPS data.
But if they have, for instance, enough, electricity to do the next trip or the next day, they don't need, they can travel, but the electric vehicle has a driving range.
Yeah.
And if it do, for instance, the entire travel for one day, but they have enough energy to do the next trip for the next few days, do they charge or
what
not?
you mentioned is a more realistic scenario. But our scenario is assume everyone charge at night if they have consumed some of the electricity. So this is more like a scoping study. It's not like exactly what in the reality people will do. I think in the reality people tend to charge one day and after maybe 2 or 3 days then charge next time if they have enough electricity for other trips.
So what was the reason that you use, for instance, the travel modeling for instance, finding if people use that thing or not? For instance, they use their vehicle or not? Because I assume that you do not consider, for instance, how much energy they use per day.
We consider that. From the travel demand model, we are able to calculate the energy consumption. That's the main reason that we use the travel demand model.
But how you use that mod, because what was the reason for using that? Because you consider that the people are going to charge anyway.
But it's based on their real demand. It's not based on like the battery capacity. So for example, as I showed here, we first need to estimate how much energy they have to need to charge for this person. So that's based on how long that person have drive during that day. It's not the same for everyone. That's why we use the model. So for each person, it's a different profile. Yeah, this is only for one person. Yeah. Go ahead.
So it's a disaggregate model that the individual you consider the VMT travel, and based on that you calculate the amount of charge I need at the end of the day to reach the full capacity.
Yeah. No, to recover.
To recover, yeah.
Yeah, to recover. Yeah.
Okay, so the total is the same.
No, to recover what that person have consumed, not to go back to the full capacity of the battery.
Yeah, but the assumption of charging every night is not really problematic.
Yeah, you reach a very good point. Like we assume they charge every night may not be very realistic.
But it's not problematic. The total charge is the same in the case study period, right?
It's not problematic. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's not because we don't charge them with actual electricity. We just recover what they have consumed. So it's different for every person.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I think maybe I missed something in your presentation, but you said you consider uncertainty in something?
Oh no, that's from the other presentation.
Okay.
My study doesn't consider uncertainty.
Quick question. Would you please clarify what is the difference between the marginal emission factor and the average? Average is clear. What did you mean with the marginal emission factor?
Yeah, this can be a little bit confusing when the first time you hear about it. So for marginal, it means like with one actual electricity generated, how much emission that will be. Yeah. And in this case, it's more like other than the base load, if I want to generate one actual megawatt electricity, what energy sources will support that? So that is more considered a marginal increase instead of the average increase. Yeah.
Hi Jessie, that's a very nice presentation, thank you. So my question was, you said you looked into the relationship between the energy consumption with average speed. So my question is, what was the basis of this selection?
The what?
So why energy consumption with average speed? So could we consider any other parameter instead of average speed? Was there anything we could look into?
Yeah, so there are so many different ways to estimate energy consumption. For example, you can also there are also studies based on temperature to decide energy consumption from electric vehicle. But we decided to use a study that find a relationship between average speed and energy consumption rate, because from the model we are able to know the average speed for each trip. So that can help us to make a relatively more accurate estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to your answer?
Yeah.
So it has proven in one of the studies that average speed and average acceleration, they define 85% relation to the emissions. So most of the studies, they rely on average speed. Sometimes they take average acceleration and so on. But average speed is the best.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Yijun. If you have more questions, Yijun will be here at the end, so we can still ask her. So now we're going to move to Wang's presentation.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good noon, everyone. My name is An. I see a lot of familiar faces here, so I'm going to jump right into my study regarding the uncertainty in regional emission estimation from private vehicles in the GTHA area. And let's get started. So this is our motivation for the study, because as many of you may know, like regional emission modeling, they're actually incorporated in many regulatory and decision-making purposes. Also do many agencies and governments, before they start a project, they do environmental analysis and assessment to determine the project's impacts on local environment and ecology. And also the most common way they will do this is use a single point estimate, which means say in traffic emission estimation, we usually use what is called an emission factor. So for a car traveling at 30 miles per hour, you might assume a single emission factor that is from about 200 to 300 grams per mile, and that's what people usually do. And this method leads to less robustness when it deals with urban transportation system. This is especially true because the urban transportation system is so vibrant, and it incorporates a lot of uncertainty, and the speed, the volume changes over time drastically, and it is currently embracing so many revolutions like electrification, automation, and sharing mobility. And also we found, like, in current practices and studies, they lack the perspective from life cycle assessment, which means especially when you compare electric vehicles and conventional fuel vehicles, it is unfair just to compare their operational emissions. And so that we think we might be able to combine variability and uncertainty in emission modeling. Also, we would like to introduce a LCE perspective so that we can better inform our decision makers during the policy appraisal process. And after that, we have cleared our objectives. There are mainly 3 objectives. The first one is we want to identify like the possible uncertainty and variability that we can actually account for in our emission modeling, and also we would like to quantify them, and then we would like to apply them into current existing emission estimation tool, and while including fuel cycle emissions. So yeah, actually this presentation is prepared for TRB, and those American people don't really know the geographic of Canada, so I just showed this map. I guess I'll skip this part and jump into the methods and data. So we do like many 3 steps in our emission modeling. So first we do Monte Carlo process to draw, in each Monte Carlo run we draw one well to tank, which is upstream emission factor from its own distribution, and then we draw one tank to wheel, which is operational emission factor from its own distribution, and then we combine them with the traffic assignment results from the GTHA model, and we can get a well to wheel, which is the life cycle, a fuel cycle actually, regional emission distribution. I'll show this process in more detail in next set of few slides, and I'll talk about this backwards so you can always have a full idea of what we did. So this is what we did to get the traffic assignment and the regional fuel cycle emission, and so we have TDS data. Input the TDS data into our GTHA model. We do demand modeling and traffic assignment, so we get leak-based speed and volume, and then we draw from in one Monte Carlo run, we draw one tank to wheel, which is operational emission factor, to combine with the link volume based on the speed of each link, so we can get regional operational emission estimate. Also, we can do that the same for energy consumption for the regional. Then we combine the energy consumption rate energy consumption estimate with the upstream emission factor, so we get the original upstream emission estimate. So upstream, which is WTT, together with operational, which is TTW, we get original fuel cycle emission estimate. And for all the uncertainties and variability that possibly could happen in our emission modeling process, we have identified a few. This is not all of it. Obviously, there are much more than this, but this is the ones we think that might actually affect our results. So from the upstream uncertainty, we have crude oil extraction. So our crude oil, as you may know in Ontario, are from various sources. So they're from Alberta, they're from Algeria, they're from Angola, the US. Also we have a supply share, because in every year, the share of each, the share of import from each of the above-mentioned regions are different. And also the refining process incorporate a lot of uncertainty in it. We have actually import gasoline from US, and we import gasoline from Quebec. Also, during the operational uncertainty, we have considered different emission factor from different drive cycles at the same speed. Say you have a car traveling at 30 miles per hour, it can be traveling constantly at certain miles per hour, or it can stop and go, and still its average speed is 30 miles per hour. And we have considered vehicle type and road type. Also others, there's global warming potential values for methane and N2O. Yeah, that's all the uncertainties and variabilities we have considered. So I'll show you briefly the operational emission distribution. So, okay, since we're at blue, but I don't think you can actually see the difference. So the left bars, the last boxes are for 2011, and the right boxes are for 2017. So you can see when the speed is low, there's a huge variability in emission factor, and when the speed gets higher, the variability and uncertainty can be ignored. So this is from the work from my colleague Wang, and I just borrowed it. So for upstream emissions, so we have identified all these pathways for Ontario gasoline supply, and you can see this is only the numbers are the share for 2011. And for each pathway, there's certain probability. You can probability that gasoline is actually from that pathway, and we have identified gasoline from Ontario refinery, Quebec refinery, also as well as US refinery. Other than the base case that only contains all conventional vehicles, we also designed 4 policy scenarios that consisting of two different EV penetrations, and 5% EV is a short-term goal that Ontario government would like to achieve in about 5 to 10 years, and 30% EV is the long-term goal till 2050, I guess. So I'll just show you the results we get. So here is upstream emission factors. We collected from literature. Also, we collected from GREET and Genius. So GREET, for your information, is upstream, it's developed in Argonne National Lab. It's a tool, it's a model to estimate emissions, life cycle emissions for different fuels, alternative fuels. And Genius is basically the Canadian version of GREET. So we also get other sources from different literature. So you can see here there are many. So just see here the Ontario refinery. This bar, all these dots and this box plots indicating all the emission factors we found from literature and Greek and Genius. How people are really estimating the emission factor from Ontario refinery. They're quite different. So it ranges from 5 gram of CO2 per megajoule gasoline produced, all the way to 25. So that's how people can perceive Ontario refinery will emit when produce gasoline, and also for all other say U.S. refineries, QC refineries, also Canadian oil sand production and Canadian conventional crude oil production. And then with Monte Carlo, all these emission factors based on their probability, we got this 2 distributions. So I think this one is for 2017, and this one is for 2011. And they have a quite big range from 10 gram CO2 per megajoule gasoline produced, all the way to 40 gram CO2 per megajoule gasoline produced. And this is, as I showed you, the operating emission factors. For arterial road in 2011 and 2017, also we classified our road types. We also have this kind of distribution for highways, ramps. Also, we did this for 4 periods of the day, for AM, midday, PM, and evening, because their traffic conditions are different. So here's the base case results. You can see the left one is for 2017, right one is for 2011. This is the daily emissions, daily fuel cycle emissions from private vehicles across our region. So this is so the 2017 number is the mean daily value is 29,000 tons, 7 tons CO2 equivalent, and the 2011 is about 33,000 tons per day. And you can see when you estimate, because the different emission factor you choose, you can end up, when you estimate the difference between 2011 and 2017 daily emissions, you could end up as a 7,000 gap between these 2 years. Also, you can end up with no significant difference between these 3 years. It's all depend on the emission factor you have chosen. And but this is all like the small probabilities. So the highest probability you end up, like, I think between the 95 or 90 confidence this interval. Okay, so this is for all the scenarios. So the blue ones, this one, are for 2017, and this one, the green ones are for 2011, for different EV penetrations. And so the overlap means how often you could, what's the probability you can mix up these two scenarios emission estimates. So we could say this is 5% EV penetration for 2017, and this base case for 2017. When a government agency, they're trying to do they want to introduce incentive to promote electric vehicles, they might do such a calculation to assess the actual gain from actual emission gain from their incentive program. And depending on the emission factors they chose, they could end up with like very, very big gain or very, very small gain, almost the same thing, and they possibly not passing the incentive program. That's what they probably do. And because This is especially true when you compare the emission estimates for the same region across different agencies, because you don't know which agency is using which emission factor, and or over a long time period, because over a long time period you probably have forgot or didn't document the emission factor or numbers you used the last time. You use a different set of emission factors, and it gives you like different or contradictory results. You might say, the last time the assessment is shit, and I don't want to use that, but that is not true because you used a different set of emission factors. So this gives a lot of policy making implications. And yeah, we have reached some conclusions. So basically, the range I just showed you is mainly come from the upstream emission estimate, and because the variability and uncertainty in driving behavior and drive cycles for operating emissions tends to cancel out when we aggregate them from link level to regional level, and they're ended up with very small deviation. And when EV penetration is low, like we did for 5% for 2011, 5% for 2017, and the emission gain is actually smaller than the improvement, like the gain from the improvement of the improvement in conventional vehicle technology such as engine emission reduction technologies. And we also have some future work to incorporate more uncertainties, say for detailed vehicle age and time qualification, and we like to use monthly gasoline and electric supply data to better to make our estimation even more robust. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Open questions.
Are there any questions for Anne?
Yeah.
Hi, Ren. When you say EV penetration is low, can you please quantify the amount? What could be the threshold level of penetration that we can say that we are getting more improvement rather than polluting the environment?
Here, let me show you the final cases. I draw the conclusion because, say, here's the 2017 5% EV penetration. This is the 2017 base case. This is the 2011 5% EV penetration. So you can see the mean value of 2011 when you introduce 5% EV, it is still higher than 2017 base case. So that's what I'm talking about. But how to draw the line between like the EV penetration, how it's low, what is low and what is high. So here is 5% is definitely low, but 30% you can see they don't have much overlap. So 30% is okay, I guess. So at least you get to 20 or 30%, and see you can see like I guess significant difference in emissions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As per what I understood, you conducted the simulation for the Greater Toronto Housing area, right? Traffic assignment, yeah. What was the software you?
AMI.
Sorry?
AMI.
What is it?
AMI.
Okay. For the estimation of emission, what did you employ?
I coded.
Sorry?
I
It's coded in?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not over the shelf software?
We used
you
emission
developed it?
factors from moves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we code the emission factor match our
Okay.
traffic assignment.
But the traffic assignment software, you developed it yourself? It's in-house developed or over the shelf?
No, it's not over the shelf.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.